Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South Africa's president says that rampant corruption has undermined the economy and trust. Cyril Ramaphosa testifies before the inquiry investigating graft under his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. Also, Somalia's leader tries to diffuse tensions over the proposed 2-year extension of his mandate by inviting Parliament to debate the move over the weekend. His critics accuse him of just stalling calls for his exit. And Madagascar's battle against COVID-19 has become all the more difficult since the arrival of the variant that was discovered in South Africa. With oxygen shortages and overwhelmed hospitals, the situation is coming to a head. But first, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa testified before the judicial inquiry into corruption under former President Jacob Zuma. The commission was set up back in 2018 to investigate graft at the very highest levels of government. At the time, Ramaphosa was serving as vice president. Zuma served from 2009 until 2018, when the numerous scandals that had dogged his time in power forced him out of office. Now, he's refused to testify before the commission. Sam Bradpiece tells us more.
It was the very first time that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa appeared before the Zondo Commission. He began his address by noting that corruption in South Africa, in his words, isn't anything new. He said that the old apartheid regime itself was inherently corrupt, transferring the resources of the many into the hands of the few. Now, despite that, he did acknowledge that there had been instances of corruption within the ruling ANC party, even to the very highest level of government. He said that while there had been instances of corruption, though, these weren't necessarily reflective of the party as a whole, adding that he supported the work of the Commission in establishing the truth into these historic instances of corruption. Now, Ramaphosa's appearance before the Commission might go some way to putting pressure on ex-President Jacob Zuma to make some kind of reply, perhaps even appear before the Commission himself, something he has repeatedly failed to do and is currently in hot water for. Ramaphosa's testimony will continue on Thursday and later again in May.
Sam Bradpiece there for us. Now, the scale of corruption in the country under Zuma's tenure has shaken faith in the ruling ANC party, which has dominated since the end of apartheid in 1994. Ramaphosa's admission that a lot had gone wrong during the Zuma years, and despite his promises to root out corruption, still left some South Africans fearing that the problem goes deeper than he has yet acknowledged.
We want to know, as people of South Africa, how did we reach here? Why the country is in this state today? The ANC must explain. They must call other people, I don't want to mention them, but all of them, they must come here. They were in government.
He was president, rather deputy president of ANC. He was deputy president of the country when all these things happened. When monies disappeared, he was part and parcel of the same thing.
Now, some armed opponents of Somalian President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed have refused to pull back from parts of the capital that they seized over the weekend. This despite his calls for a parliamentary debate on Saturday over controversial plans to extend his term. The proposal led to clashes on Sunday, and up to 100,000 people are thought to have fled since then because of fears of all-out war. Some have dismissed the president's attempt to defuse this standoff by accusing him of just passing the buck to Parliament. Nicholas Sharma talks us through.
It was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning in Somalia when President Farmajo addressed the nation. Farmajo did not explicitly say he was abandoning his controversial decision to extend his mandate by 2 years, but his call for urgent discussions was welcomed by several opposition leaders. Others accused him of stalling. His mandate should have expired in February, and his earlier decision to extend it had angered many in Somalia.
A lot of this, I'd say, is actually a reaction to some developments that have happened over the past few years within the Somali federal model, in which President Farmajo has really sought to centralize power a bit more at the expense of some of the federal member states. And so there's been a backlash.
On Wednesday, al-Shabaab jihadists claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing in Mogadishu that killed several people. Observers said the group are looking to profit from the current tensions among Somalia's political parties. In recent days, there have been clashes in the capital between soldiers loyal to Farmajo and those who oppose him. Analysts are worried that the National Army is now fragmenting along clan lines.
One Burkinabe is still missing following an attack in the east of the country on Monday in which 3 Europeans were killed. The 2 Spaniards and an Irishman were killed in an anti-poaching patrol. The government's blamed the violence on unspecified terrorists. The country is overall struggling to tackle attacks by extremists, which have become more frequent throughout the region since 2015. This week, 15 people were reportedly killed in an overnight raid on villages in the northern area of Sitanga. Now, the high-profile killings of the Europeans have brought home for many Burkinabés the fragility of security in the country.
Il ne faut pas se voiler la face en disant que l'État gère la situation. L'État, aujourd'hui, ne gère pas la situation. Il y a au moins un tiers du pays qui est à la main de ces djihadistes-là.
Ça nous désole beaucoup. En tout cas, nous, les Burkinabés, bon, ça n'encourage pas les gens de venir. Même nous, on est impactés. Si les gens pouvaient nous aider de l'extérieur pour qu'on arrive à sacher le terrorisme hors de nos frontières.
Now, UN Children's Agency UNICEF will redistribute more than 1 million vaccine jabs meant for DR Congo. Doses handed out under the global COVAX scheme are due to expire on June 24th. And so those for DR Congo that still remain will be given to other countries struggling to get a hold of stock. Congolese people have been slow to get immunized. The country's vaccination campaign began on April 19th, but under 1,300 have so far been given a shot. Madagascar's battle against COVID-19 has become all the more difficult since the arrival of the variant discovered in South Africa. Around 10,000 cases and 200 deaths have been officially recorded over the last month, and that could be an underestimation of the true figure. With oxygen shortages and overwhelmed hospitals, the situation is unfortunately coming to a head.
Basic mass-produced coffins line the street. This had become a regular sight over the past few weeks. Orders have exploded ever since the arrival of the coronavirus variant discovered in South Africa, known as 501YV2. To deal with the influx of patients, hotels and schools have been transformed into hospitals. In this school, all the sick are hooked up to oxygen machines around the clock. Eugene has just lost his brother-in-law after one of the machines suddenly shut down. He says the care here is just not good enough. Eugene says there were 9 deaths in the high school in a single day, but official records show just 6. Authorities have boasting that Madagascar is doing better than its neighbors.
Il y a des morts, mais les morts à Madagascar ne sont pas comme en Afrique, par exemple, tout près de nous, c'est l'Afrique du Sud. Bien qu'on a vu augmenter le nombre de décès, mais pas tellement effroyable.
Despite the fighting talk, the authorities have had to build extra cemeteries to deal with the bodies. Madagascar has put off importing vaccines for a long time, instead opting for an organic herbal remedy called CVO+. It won't receive its first vaccine doses until July.
Now, as Senegal tackled coronavirus, wrestlers were forced to stay away from the ring and each other. So with the easing of restrictions, fans of the sport are looking forward to getting to grips with a different kind of battle.
Feet firm in the sand, they tackle each other again. Wrestling is back in Senegal for the first time in more than a year. The coronavirus shut down fights in March 2020. No more training, no more crowds, no more matches.
This caused a great deal of loss for everyone involved, because wrestling isn't just about wrestlers, it's also the teams and the entire economic environment that exists around the sport.
Wrestling is incredibly popular in Senegal, second maybe only to football. More than a game, it has cultural importance. It's rooted in harvest rituals of the local Sera and Jola people. It's also a source of employment. More than 8,000 people lost their jobs when COVID-19 struck. Not even the stars were spared. The wrestler, known as Umar Sene, couldn't wait to hear the crowds roar around the arena again.
If we only had to take care of our families in this time, it wouldn't be a problem. But others rely on us, with whom we have to share what we have. I'm very close to my fans, and I have a responsibility to support them. We've really felt the impact of the damage caused by the pandemic.
All Senegalese people enjoy wrestling because we find ourselves in it. It's more than a sport. It's an entire cultural experience that is wrapped up in watching a wrestling match.
Mass protests shook the country in March, the worst unrest in years. Wrestling bosses say the return of fighting will restore Senegal's spirit.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.